So Zainab Khatib, if you'd like to join me on the stage, thank you very much indeed. She's going to be talking about specifically finding clarity in cyber risks. I'm sure you'd like to join me in a round of applause as Zainab makes her way to the stage. Thank you very much indeed.
Assalamu alaikum. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us all in Pakistan. So today we're going to be speaking about finding clarity in cyber risks. Obviously, in this bid to keep up with the fast-growing demand of more and alternative energy sources, the pressure for cutting-edge innovation and rapid commercialization of technologies is being required. Governments worldwide have ensured that their national climate change strategies are clear. There must be an energy transition, one that sees significantly reduced use of fossil fuels and a movement into these alternative greener sources in line with their global environmental, societal, and governance ESG targets. Cyber resilience and managing these associated risks must be embraced in that energy growth and transition paradigm to ensure that this more expansive future can be achieved and maintained. Today, we're going to find clarity in these risks so that you as organizations can foster growth, commit to these objectives, and build resilience to that dynamic risk. To do so, we're going to step backwards just for a moment to understand what kind of cyber risks the energy and power sector has been grappling with. Then we're going to briefly step forward in considering what risks Industry 4.0 is dealing with today. We're going to contemplate how as an organization you can home these risks and why your existing PDBI policy may not be the place for that exposure. And finally, we need to understand how boardroom conversations around cyber risks are changing in order to develop this cyber resilience. So in terms of cyber statistics, particularly for the region, these are hard and fast to come by. The ones we're looking at here are anecdotal in nature, in that they're from a variety of different reports, a variety of different testing groups as well. But the results are interesting, and they've been backed by some recent insurance claims data as well that we've recently seen. So just to touch on one, for example, 60% of operational technology incidents that affect industrial control systems result in operational disruption. Now, that's a large percentage that go beyond a simple data breach and is something we will see later on that's continuing to be a key aim of these threat actors that are targeting the sector. 80% of events in the energy and power sector start with an IT system compromise, with a third indirectly enabled by internal personnel. We see this characteristic come to light in insurance claims data too, very recently. So one of the largest cyber insurers globally reported that incidents affecting the energy sector last year, over 55% of them were due to an insider causing that loss. So that's both malicious and accidental losses. And that's important because whilst the cybersecurity controls that you have can help prevent these attacks, not all traditional controls will help, as that employee is already within that network and they have access to everything already. 56% of energy and utility industry respondents say their organization's first priority is building technological resilience now. So we're finally seeing this conversation change from, are we defending ourselves, to are we building the agility to respond and recover to events, something that we're going to touch upon later. Finally, nearly 60% of attackers targeting the power and energy sector come from nation-state affiliated groups. This is not surprising, as the power sector is obviously considered national critical infrastructure, and a key aim of nation-backed actors are looking to disrupt anything that constitutes critical infrastructure to achieve their larger aims of strategic or political objectives. When it comes to the type of damage that occurs, though, this is important because of the significant investment and knowledge that they have backing them in terms of their techniques and their efforts, and they have a key aim of not being found out to be on the systems. Another focal point for all organizations, but particularly the insurance market, has been ransomware trends. Now, this graph has been taken from Coveware. They're a company who help organizations remediate ransomware events, and they reported that the rate of victims who are paying the ransoms continue to plummet, contrary to popular belief. COVWare said that 34% of ransomware victims paid the ransom in Q2 of 2023, and that was a sharp decline from the previous quarter, an enormous decline from 2020 and then back to 2019. When looking into this data, the insurance market and COVWare have found that, unlike previously, threat actors can actually be less and less relied upon to hold true to the promises of giving organizations access back to the systems, access back to their data following these ransom threats. Or they end up anyway misusing that stolen confidential data, even if the ransom demand is met. So companies having insight into threat actors' habits will be increasingly critical going forward to help these organizations determine what is the right choice for their organization in these critical moments. Now, the energy sector has not in any way been sheltered from cyber risk and sort of the landscape that we've seen. And there are vast examples of types of losses that have occurred over a number of years. Now, the main takeaway here, when we look at all the various losses that have occurred, are the different incidents and how they've played out in terms of the number of entry points. When we look at things like system updates, removable USB devices, billing systems, being the cause behind these incidents. And then we can see this ranging from human error to negligence, both criminal and nation-backed state cyber attacks. And resultantly, the wide outcomes that we've seen from data breaches, ransom demands, and operational disruption. What's noteworthy is many of these companies will be large global firms with robust security controls, and they still end up being susceptible to these incidents because of the vast array and ways that these sort of attacks can manifest themselves, and they are rapidly evolving in nature. So looking forward now, the technology behind current, small to multi-million-dollar energy projects worldwide is confidently addressing critical energy challenges when we look at efficiency, decarbonization, by utilizing more data analytics. The newest SCADA systems provides, smart, fully integrated renewable solutions as well, for example. However, these new and improved technologies introduce more vulnerabilities, as we've touched upon, than traditional systems because they're increasingly digitally interconnected. So they are expanding that attack surface. We work with companies in the sector who, of course, have one of their top cybersecurity controls in place, being the segregation between operational technology and information technology. But despite this, like the previous slide, we're still seeing losses occur in the sector, and the risks displayed here continue to be the top projected ones for this sector. Firstly, operational disruption. Cyber attacks can cause disruptions to power operations, leading to power outages or disruptions in energy supplies. Attackers might target the control systems, the SCADA systems, or industrial control systems to gain unauthorized access and manipulate those operations. Then we see data breaches. The power sector actually does collect a vast amount of sensitive data, whether that's customer information, operational data, and intellectual property. Data breaches can lead to financial loss, regulatory penalties, damage to the company's reputation, and legal complications as well. And when it comes to that intellectual property theft, the innovative technologies and designs employed in the power sector do make it an attractive target for this kind of theft. Competitors or threat actors may attempt to steal valuable research data, designs, or proprietary information comprising a company's competitive advantage. Then we have physical damage as well. Over time, for reasons of competitiveness and productivity, a lot of OT systems have started to become connected, not only to each other, but increasingly to enterprise IT systems and to the internet. And so that makes them cyber physical systems, something we will touch upon. Unfortunately, and particularly as more and more ransomware has evolved, the bad actors have actually realized that if they can affect these systems, either the safety equipment or the shutdown of a plant, they can compel companies to pay the ransom a lot faster than just exfiltrating data. Supply chain vulnerabilities. The power sector relies on a complex network of suppliers and vendors. Cyber attackers targeting the supply chain partners can lead to the introduction of compromised or malicious components within the supply chain, affecting the integrity and security of these power systems, both IT and OT. Again, one of the large global insurers reported that from the energy sector, the second top cause of loss was from vendor service interruption, so the supply chain risk. they've noted that the vendor service incidents are on the rise again, and it just calls for more robust supply chain and third-party risk management. Then we have vulnerabilities in smart infrastructure. Smart grids and sensor networks enable the efficient transmission and management of renewable energy. However, these systems also do introduce new cyber risks if they're not adequately secured. Threat actors might exploit vulnerabilities there to manipulate grid operations or disrupt energy distribution as well. Then the prime topic always is ransomware attacks. Now, the rise in ransomware attacks poses a significant threat to that power sector. Attackers can encrypt critical infrastructure or data, demanding ransom payments to be made to restore access. Such attacks can result in significant financial losses and operational downtime. In 2023, we saw an overall increase in ransomware events as compared to 2022, and we're seeing this increase again in Q1 of 2024, with the insurance market already having dealt with 9-figure ransom demands. Again, this just reiterates the need for continued robust defense in depth, not only to keep the attackers out, but to prevent movement once they're actually inside the system and limiting damage once they're inside. And finally, insider threats, which we've already obviously mentioned. Insider threats within the energy sector can have severe consequences. Employees or contractors with privileged access might intentionally or accidentally compromise the security of these systems, leading to data breaches, operational disruptions, or the IP theft that we've touched on. To mitigate these risks, organizations in the power sector should prioritize implementing robust cybersecurity measures and ongoing monitoring and collaboration with industry experts to stay ahead of cyber threats. With this in mind, all companies require careful cyber risk assessment. And the cyber insurance market can help provide front-end risk control guidance to contribute to risk management knowledge, ultimately preventing unforeseen losses, and importantly lead to the response and management process post a cyber incident occurring, because it's an area that they have vast experience in. Often when trying to calculate the possible fallout from a cyber incident, property damage and ensuing loss is a top concern for the energy and power sector. This is, of course, a very real exposure, with previous incidents indicating the potential for physical damage loss as a result of a successful hacking attempt. So we saw this with the German steel mill incident in 2014, where a cyber attack on their industrial control systems led to the improper shutdown of a blast furnace and then massive damage to that blast furnace. But there are more pressing exposures as well that the sector does need to be considering that will directly impact a company's success. Multiple claims report how costly business interruption costs following a non-physical damage cyber incident can be, with the BI share of overall claims being much higher than any other sort of cause of loss when we look at the claims breakdown there, should the network be materially interrupted. Now, if a project suffers a cyber incident, entities need to contemplate how much non-damage financial loss could be experienced first with each day of downtime from a variety of scenarios, and considering a variety and plethora of costs. And this is where we see cyber insurance policies helping to pick up these costs that businesses face. I'm not going to run through all of these, but they can include forensic investigation costs, costs for data system restoration or rectification, and that can take up to 3 months sometimes to get systems back up and running. Extra expenses in trying to find alternative ways of keeping a project operational, so alternative production sites, purchasing power on the spot market, possible ransom payments that have to be made, penalties for failing to supply the contractually agreed power supply, regulatory mandates for shutting down operations, and that resultant loss of income. The risk of mishandling a cyber event should also not be underestimated when it comes to reputational harm. Cyber insurance policies grant themselves as invaluable support to your in-house teams at the time of an incident, because they give you access to automatic and immediate access to these specialist incident response vendors, whether that's forensics, legal, PR companies that help a company investigate, respond to, and terminate an incident. Not only can they assist in this, but it also plays out in the cost effectiveness of handling an incident. It has a direct positive impact on the ultimate BI claim if it can be managed appropriately. What we end up seeing then is once an incident is managed appropriately, it alleviates excessive involvement from higher management in such instances, and then it minimizes further disruption to the business. But why don't most property BI policies cover these loss vectors? The answer requires a bit more context on recent cyber events and changes, and this is something that we continuously discuss with our clients and continuously comes up as a question. Now, the NotPetya and WannaCry ransomware attacks in 2017 and 2019 resulted in numerous lawsuits against property insurers that did not believe their policies covered physical damage arising out of a cyber attack. And underwriters realized that they'd overlooked a massive blind spot here. As a result, the concept of silent cyber remediation was sort of born. Over the last 5 or more years, most, if not all, major insurers have undergone extensive internal audits on their non-cyber portfolios, such as property, marine, stock throughput, product liability, and casualty policies, to identify and exclude any unintentional or unexpected loss arising from a cyber event. They needed to do this because there was no way to underwrite and quantify the risk. There was no actuarial data to price that risk, and the premiums collected were not nearly enough to cover the losses that could occur because of a cyber attack. As a result of these initiatives, insurers have imposed countless new and disparate cyber exclusions on property, casualty, marine, and other policies, vis-a-vis the Lloyd's LMA wordings excluding cyber physical damage. At the same time, global cyber reinsurers have begun excluding, global various reinsurers have begun excluding coverage within their reinsurance treaties as well for cyber physical damage losses. The resulting situation meant that quite literally every single insurer had their own specific way of reducing exposures to cover physical damage risk on every single non-cyber policy they've offered. So how can companies resolve this coverage gap? These exclusions put risk managers and their companies in an exceptionally dangerous position. There may be incorrect expectations about how your company's insurance portfolio will respond to a catastrophic cyber event resulting in property damage. And what's worse is that the balance sheet protection that insurance brings would evaporate at that point where a company needs it most. In today's world of cyber attacks, clients are left with limited choices of perils and cyber wrap products to protect their property exposures from resulting property damage and time element loss due to that cyber attack or cyber terrorism on their IT systems and those of their suppliers, customers, and their service providers. As a result of the silent cyber exclusions now ever present in the insurance market, a highly competent and bespoke market was born that affirmatively now covers excluded physical damage perils with policies that dovetail with your company's property, casualty, and cyber insurance programs. Various leading insurance houses in London, Europe, North America, and now in the Middle East as well have carved out skilled underwriting teams to analyze and price cyber physical damage risk. Possible solutions today available for the energy sector to manage these various risks would include, number one, an exclusion buyback. So looking into the exact exclusion you've got placed under your property policies and repurchasing cover for this exact peril to be written back into the policy. Secondly, and the more recommended type, is a full standalone cyber property policy. For example, LOCKTON silent cyber property solutions, clients can purchase a standalone policy for resulting property damage and time element loss beyond the perils of fire exclusion that result from a cyber attack or cyber terrorism, with terms that blend standard wording found in your property policy and cyber policy form. And this can also be purchased on an excess of difference in conditions, difference in limits as well. And finally, a non-damage cyber policy. This would cover all of the additional direct and indirect costs that will still be incurred in the event of a physical incident and would definitely be incurred in any other sort of cyber incident that is incurred by a business. So considering this existing risk landscape and the various considerations that have to be made when looking at meeting current growth objectives the energy and power sector has, whose responsibility is it for driving this conversation within an organization? Cyber risk can be hard to understand, but the ultimate protection of the balance sheet will come down to the directors and officers of the company, not the cybersecurity department. Directors and officers are now increasingly being seen to hold the personal responsibility to drive and endorse a cybersecurity risk management framework with a top-down approach to ensure its applicability and effectiveness company-wide. In the event a cyber incident is successful against an organization, and as a result there is a financial or reputational loss, there are increasing examples of executive leadership being held liable for the failure to address this current risk through an effective risk management program or procurement of cyber insurance policy for the additional financial protection. Recent high-profile cyber events have actually shown this difficulty for all organizations, irrespective of industry and size. Board members whose plates are already full are also dealing with competing strategic risk challenges. With added cyber risk issues, the simple velocity of cyber risk can be difficult to initially understand. Despite this, boards should start to understand the questions which high-performing peers are asking to help keep pace with this topic. This type of risk culture is both top-down and bottom-up, and asking the right kind of questions can help organizations understand how to make tough choices when it comes to investment in cybersecurity versus product expansion and growth, or relying on a third party to deliver a service or solution versus the risks they present in doing so. So for example, let's take point 2 here. Are we investing? Ensuring that an organization first and foremost has dedicated fiscal resources to address cyber risk and invest in a cyber risk resilience strategy is essential. But this is now considered the minimum. How can this question be elevated in a boardroom? Boards can instead ask, how are we investing? Why is it important to ask this? Organizations might have made significant investments in cybersecurity, however, they might not be in the right areas. Over-investing in cyber risk management strategies that don't align with business needs can have equally negative impacts. It's called cybersecurity tool sprawl, and that's where organizations invest in too many security applications and they create that extra expense. And that is something we're starting to find now with companies that are trying to keep pace with cyber risk. In a typical board meeting, the cybersecurity presentations cover threats and the actions and technologies the company is implementing to protect against them. Organizations must know they cannot be completely protected, no matter how much money they invest in technologies or programs to stop cyber attacks. And while spending resources to protect these assets is critical, limiting discussions to protection sets an organization up for disaster. Linking this back to the first statistic that we touched upon about resilience, we are seeing this increase now in the power sector from shifting that conversation to developing cyber resilience. And that will be the key in continuing to develop sound risk management frameworks that can help foster growth in the energy sector as well. Thank you very much.